Hello, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's Thursday with AARP Wisconsin. I am Amber Miller, your host, and just appreciate you guys joining us. I do have a different background today. I'm actually at the AARP Wisconsin office, so good to see fellow coworkers and be back in the office. So I have a little bit of a different background. So just in case you were wondering. So before we get to our beautiful guest today, just a few reminders. If you're interested in learning more about what AARP Wisconsin is doing related to advocacy, upcoming workshops, driver safety, and all that goodness, you could visit our website at aarp.org/WI, which is below. And then you can also find, once again, information about volunteer opportunities, and then a link to our Facebook and our YouTube page. Of course, we would love for you to subscribe to our YouTube page, as you can find past shows there also. If you recall, Community Connections is an initiative that was started by AARP a couple years back. You can find a couple different things there. One is local volunteer opportunities in your community that you can either join or create yourself. And then you'll also find information about AARP Friendly Voice. This is free, open to all ages. You do not need to be an AARP member. And what you could do is put a request in for yourself or for your loved one to receive a phone call from one of our AARP trained volunteers, because as we know, it's just really nice to hear a friendly voice on the other end. So you can find that information at AARP communityconnections.org or by calling 1-888-281-0145. And as we know, April is Volunteer Month. We love and adore all of our volunteers that make us do all the great impact that we can do within our area. So if you're interested in joining the AARP Wisconsin volunteer team, we invite you to check out aarp.org/I12, so the number 2 volunteer. It'll take you to a website with additional information on how to volunteer with AARP, and also the application that you can fill out and submit. We are slowly trying to get back to some in-person functions, but we also still have virtual opportunities if you're interested. So you can go to the website below or the AARP Wisconsin website. But we would love for you to join our volunteer family. So today we have 2 guests, and normally we allocate this particular Thursday for all of our advocacy initiatives. So we're joined today by Helen, of course, with our AARP Wisconsin advocacy team. And then we also have a guest, Janet Zander, and she is with the Greater Wisconsin Agency on Aging Resources, also known as GWAR, which is GWAAR. She's going to talk a little bit about GWAR and her role there, but we're talking about Aging Advocacy Day, which this might be the first time you've heard about it, but we're going to have a discussion about that today. But thank you so much, ladies, for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation, Amber.
Yeah, thank you. And Helen, of course, is also in the office today. So once again, we have different backgrounds today. So Janet, I'm going to start just with you. If you could talk a little bit about your position at GWAR and GWAR itself, because this might be the first time that people are hearing about your organization.
Sure. So I'm the Advocacy and Public Policy Coordinator for our agency. Our agency is one of 3 area agencies on aging in the state of Wisconsin. Our primary role is to provide training and technical assistance around the Older Americans Act programs to the 70 counties and 11 tribes within our region. We do a variety of other things. So we run an elder abuse hotline, and we provide legal support services for our benefit specialists in the counties and tribes. And a variety of other services. But that's our main reason for existence, is as an area agency on aging. We have a main office in Madison, and we have a secondary office in Brookfield.
And Janet, I'm sorry, could you also explain what the Wisconsin Aging Advocacy Network is? That's another acronym, which is WAAN. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. About just over a decade ago, the Wisconsin Aging Advocacy Network was formed. It's a coalition of aging network professionals and older adults who decided to get together and join forces to shape public policy that would improve the lives of older adults in Wisconsin.
Terrific. And Helen, of course, Mark Sticks is here with AARP Wisconsin. I always say she doesn't need an introduction, but I still like to introduce her anyways because she's so fabulous. Helen, can you talk a little bit about how the Wisconsin the Wisconsin Aging Advocacy Network works together with AARP? If you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. AARP Wisconsin emphasizes our individual members and individuals as a whole. And the difference is the Advocacy Network, which we are standing guests at every meeting because we work together so much. They represent the programs and the people who provide services, as well as having individual older adults. So we're like this, the first cousin of WAN, and we attend all the meetings. Janet has no shyness about getting me to work on committees and to coordinate with various things. We have for the most part, we're pretty much the same on the issues and concerns. Janet has more of an emphasis on programs. I have more of an emphasis on communications to individual older adults.
Great. And Darian, if we could bring up the comment from Tom. We already have a comment. And Tom Bolton, everyone knows and loves Helen. I agree, Tom. Thank you so much for that. We absolutely appreciate that. And if you're just joining us today, we are going to be talking about Wisconsin Aging Advocacy Day. We have two guests, of course, Helen with AARP Wisconsin and Janet from GWAR. So if you have any questions, whether you're watching us on Facebook.com or our YouTube page, please post them below and we'll get to them throughout the show. So Janet, can you talk a little bit about what is the Wisconsin Aging Advocacy Day?
Sure. So the Wisconsin Aging Advocacy Network a few years ago thought that it was time that our state legislators knew that there was a whole team of people behind me. So they'd been talking to me, but we wanted them to see the rest of the network, that this was a much larger group. So beginning in about 2016, we started gathering those aging advocates and older adults together to communicate with their state legislators on what were some of the top priority issues that older adults as well as family caregivers were facing in the state. And over the years, those have been either in person at the Capitol. So we gather 300 people and go to the Capitol from all parts of the state. More recently, we've been, as so many have, doing some virtual events where they still are able to gather for a training, how to effectively communicate with your legislator, but also what are some of these issues, what are some talking points around those. And then this year, they'll be making calls to their legislators. All great ways for people to build those relationships.
Absolutely. And Helen, what role will AARP play in this?
Well, we've always been supportive in prior years for Aging Advocacy Day, and I've always helped with training and helped coordinate, and I was the traffic cop in the rotunda. But this year, we were in an unusual position in that, the Aging Advocacy Network is an informal coalition and doesn't have a lot of resources. And as you know, AARP is very rich in resources. So this year we stepped up and we decided to do two things. One is we decided to go all in. And even though we aren't full formal members of the Aging Network, we thought it would be good for our red shirts to meet the other local advocacy people that were doing advocacy in their geographic area. So we invited all of our folks to join in because we support the same issues. And the other thing that we have that we're putting on the table is we have our wonderful telephone communication system. And when you're trying to do something from around the state, we want people of all socioeconomic groups. We don't want people to worry about long distance call fees. We don't want people to have to look up numbers and stuff. So AARP has a wonderful phone system to go into the legislative offices, and we're contributing that and coordinating with WAN so people can use some of our abundance of resources in order to make this what is truly a voluntary coalition work and help older people connect with their elected officials.
Yeah, and I do think, advocacy is so important for the work that AARP does and GWAR, that it's exciting to talk about this Advocacy Day. Janet, I'll start with you and then I'll go to Helen. So what are this year's issues? What are we going to be advocating for?
Sure, happy to start. Coming as no surprise to anyone, I'm sure, in this meeting here is support for family caregivers.
Yeah.
That we continue to hear over and over and over again how stressful those roles can be, how much more stressful they have been during the pandemic, and we need to continue to lift up some of the things that we know will support family caregivers, like a caregiver tax credit to acknowledge the amount of money they're spending out of their own pockets as part of that caregiving role, and also about family and medical leave. So we know that caregivers have had to reduce their hours. They have to go to a lot of appointments with their family members who are receiving care, and for many of our workers they don't have even unpaid leave, much less any kind of paid leave. And so we're really looking at two different ways to support caregivers by expanding who'd be eligible,
Mhm.
those caring for grandparents or grandchildren, knowing that these days it's all hands on deck when it
Yep.
comes to caregiving, as well as creating a family and medical leave insurance program where people could pay into and actually have an opportunity to have some paid leave. So that's our
Oh.
first issue. Our second issue is funding for our Aging and Disability Resource Center network. This has been a wonderful network that's been built out over the years. ADRCs, Aging and Disability Resource Centers, have now been on board for more than 20 years. But what we're finding is that their funding has varied over the years when they came online. So early generations of those Aging and Disability Resource Centers have higher levels of funding than later generations. And really, none of them have the funding that they need to address equity issues, growing populations, et cetera. And so we're really looking at how do we make sure that these wonderful things that we've created are really sustained and continue to be effective. And the last issue is something people have been hearing a lot about, and that's protection of voter rights, and in particular, the voting rights of older adults. So, older adults who've been voting all their life, we don't want that to change because they now have a chronic condition, a physical disability, something that makes it more difficult for them. So, whether they're voting at the polls or voting absentee, we want to continue to protect their right to vote no matter what those situations are.
Yeah, these are very important issues. And Helen, did you have anything to add to Janet's comment?
Well, I have to say that Janet and I do a lot of lobbying, formal lobbying together in the Capitol. And Janet always comes with the stories and how the programs run. And I always come with individual stories because we have a lot of members that are very, very fortunate and don't need some of these programs. On the other hand, we have an obligation to help other seniors and to prevent ourselves from going into that situation where we need some of these programs. And I'm going to put Janet on the spot a little
Oh,
because she talked a little about ADRCs and the fundings for ADRCs, which are Aging and Disability Resource Centers. But I sometimes hear from people that they don't use the ADRCs because they think it's only for low income people and people who are applying for public benefits. And I do not believe that is the case. So, Janet, could you give us just a little snapshot of why everybody should be looking to the ADRCs?
Sure. You are correct, Helen. They are not just for low income older adults. And in fact, their best work is done when people reach out to them early. So the Aging and Disability Resource Centers are really available to provide information about any aging issue or any disability issue to anybody, first of all, of any age or any income level, but also to those caregivers, to family businesses, community supports. We want to make sure that we're reaching people as early as possible to provide what Helen spoke about in terms of that prevention piece, right? We want to all live our best life, take the best care we can of ourselves. And that means really understanding all the resources that are available out there to continue to preserve our not only our health, but our financial resources so
mhm.
that we can spend wisely and save wisely for our future care needs.
Absolutely. And Helen, I appreciate you asking that question because the Aging and Disability Resource Centers, they're throughout the whole state of Wisconsin. You can go on to it. I think the website link, we'll put it into the notes. There's probably one located in your county or very close by. And the one thing I love about all the resources that I think we're talking about today is they might not relate to you today, talking about caregiving, you're just like, yeah, I'm young, but eventually you might have to be a caregiver, or you might need a caregiver yourself, and being proactive, learning about the resources instead of reactive, learning about the resources sometimes too late. I just think I live by it now. These are not things that I even thought about before working at AARP, and now I'm like obsessed with all the resources that are out there, and I think we all do such a great job of trying to get that information out to the public. So I just wanted to plug that a little bit. Janet, so do you think, we're going to get back to the advocacy day because that's why we're here, but I appreciate the other resources. Do you think these types of advocacy days make a difference?
I think they make a difference in a wide variety of different ways, right? So first is to show those legislators that there are really constituents behind all of the issues that Helen and I spend a lot of time talking with them at the Capitol about, that these are real people in their communities who are concerned about these. The second is to really help people see that it isn't that scary to talk to the legislators, right? That these are just people like you and I that come with different backgrounds and really need to understand how different policies are impacting the constituents in their district. And so it shows both an opportunity to learn how to make that communication, but also that you don't have to be an expert. You have lived experience that's really important to share. And participating in that as a group really has made that an easy first step for people to dip their toe in.
And Helen, any additional comments about, these days being in, the importance of them?
I really love it when I walk into an office and I find that they know what I'm talking about because they've had constituents call them. Or when an office calls me and says something like, Helen, all these people are calling me about the CARE Act, and I know they're yours. What are they talking about? What do you need from us? And they really care about constituents much more than they care about lobbyists like Janet and I. We're good lobbyists. We're decent human, ethical human beings, but we still have that label.
You guys are kind of like the Laverne and Shirley of Wisconsin advocacy, because Helen did mention, Janet, before this, how long you guys have known each other and just like all the work that you've done. So I'm going to, hopefully it's not trademarked, but the Laverne and Shirley of advocacy, definitely.
We have already used Lucy and Ethel several times.
Generational difference.
I love Lucille Ball myself. So it looks like we have, let's start with the comment first we have a Facebook user. This person said, caregiving is only going to increase in the future for all of us. And definitely, we could not agree with you more. And then Jim does have a question. Which other organizations are working to make life better for Wisconsinites as they age? And are your two groups working with them to coordinate advocacy work? And Janet, I'll start with you and then I'll go to Helen.
There's a lot of organizations, of which Helen and I belong to many, many coalitions that are working on improving the lives of people in general, and certainly as they age. So we work very closely with our disability organizations through the Survival Coalition. We work with health coalitions. So not so much particular agencies as much as these large coalitions that are concerned about health and welfare and preserving people's rights.
And besides the work we do in coalitions, Janet and I both serve on a couple of boards where we represent older people, like she's on the Long-Term Care Advisory Council. We have meetings with places like the Department of Health Services. And you have to remember that GWAR is an agency, but the Wisconsin Aging Advocacy Network is really a giant coalition and really does represent people like the Wisconsin Healthy Aging Institute, the nutrition programs, the Association of Senior Centers, a lot of people that are directly involved face-to-face with seniors in various types of service.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Jim, for that question. Janet, I'm going to go back to you. We're alluding to the Aging Advocacy Day. Hopefully people are getting excited about this. I have kind of two questions. Can anyone participate in the Aging Advocacy Day? And if so, how do they go about registering?
Sure. So hearing what those 3 priorities are,
Mhm.
anybody who's interested in advocating on those topics is welcome to join us. While we're certainly recruiting older adults and people who work in the Aging Network, anyone is welcome. And we often have people of a wide variety of ages. If they're interested, you'll see the link on your screen right to the registration form. But an easy way to get there is to just go to GWAAR for guar.org. And on our homepage is a link that will take people to more information about Aging Advocacy Day, as well as our registration form. I would remind everyone or tell everyone that registration will close on April 29th.
Okay, great. So there is still some time if you're watching this live or in replay, getting it, kind of excited about, wow, I've never heard of this, or this would be a really great opportunity to, advocate on those issues. So Janet, if somebody's watching this right now and they're like, ooh, I've never, advocated, I've never kind of done this before. What advice would you give to somebody who's interested but never done it before?
Don't let that intimidate you.
Mm-hmm.
So many people have come to Aging Advocacy Day and it was their very first time. And we walk people through a really brief training that just helps them learn how to share the talking points, how to introduce themselves, and just the basics of the issues so that it's not going to be something that they have to be intimidated by. And it's really meant for everybody who's been doing this for years, as well as somebody who just wants to try it for the first time. So be assured that there's a training and a full packet of information that gets sent to every participant to look through ahead of time so people can feel comfortable and get their questions answered well before we start picking up those phones.
And the other thing is the legislators and staff know that it's Wisconsin Aging Advocacy Day. So when you call, it's not like a cold call that they've never heard of this, they've never heard of our issues. They're expecting to hear from us, and they're expecting to hear from you, their constituents, and because that's who you'll be linked to, your own elected officials. And that really makes the difference, that it's real people from their district, and you'll be prepared with talking points. It is not very difficult. And when you're on a telephone, you could make faces if you're nervous. You can read from a piece of paper and let your hand shake. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that the elected official or the staffer is going to say to the elected official, we had 15 people call us today about this issue. Maybe we have to pay attention.
Absolutely. Janet, can you just remind us one more time what the cutoff date, what the day is for the Advocacy Aging Day, the cutoff for the last day to register, and the website, if we just have some people are like, ooh, I just need to get that information one more time.
Sure. Thank you. I don't even think we talked about the day. So May 11th, it's a Wednesday, May 11th. We will gather at 1:00 for that virtual training, which will run from 1 to 2:30. And then our participants will be making calls from 2:30 to 4:00 that afternoon. So all in that afternoon, if they go to gwaar.org on your screen here, they will find a link on our homepage to all of the information about the event and a way to register. April 29th is the deadline to register.
Great. Ladies, it's great. I think it's very inspiring, and if you're one of our viewers watching this live or in replay and thinking like, I want my voice to be heard, or how can I make a difference within my state or within my community, this is such a great opportunity to just even dabble in advocacy and fight for what we should be fighting for caregivers and voting. And there's just so much that you can get involved with. Helen, I'm going to give you the last remarks for the show for any comments final comments you'd like to make.
Janet and I often do public presentations when we talk about how important advocacy is and how important individuals are. What we don't often share with people is that it's fun. You meet decent people doing it. You develop relationships with your elected officials and their staff. And you get a real good sense of accomplishment because things do happen because we advocate for them. We have more disability specialists because we advocated for them. We get more funding for a program. We get a little help for caregivers. And sometimes it's a long fight. Sometimes we don't get it quick and easy. But it's a good fight, and it's a fight that you really like and admire the people that you're advocating with. And so I'm going to put in a last word for fun. Come and join us on the 11th. Go through the training. And, as I say, it's that day. All we're asking for you is probably 2 phone calls, one to your senator, one to your representative, toll free. All you're giving us at this point is time, but you'll have a real impact if you do it.
Great. Helen and Janet, I could see why you ladies work so well together. You guys have been fun and just giving out such great information and resources to get people thinking about things that they can do advocacy related within their communities. I want to thank you both so much for joining us today, and hopefully our viewers, whether once again viewing live or in replay, will get involved. And once again, you can find that information at the website AAR.org. Thank you, ladies, so much. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you for your support.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And as always, before I end the show, we love to promote some upcoming events that might be of interest to you. We're going to get there. Okay, thank you. We have a couple of movies for grown-ups screaming Nightmare Alley, the April 19th Travel and Food Lecture, the Berkshire's Food Historian Lecture. That sounds fun. Wednesday, the 20th lecture, Mysteries of the Pyramids of, and I was going to ask our producer, Darren, I'm going to say Giza, but if not, please do not judge me. Friday the 22nd, movies for grown-ups screening, West Side Story, which we know just won an Oscar. And then April 25th, you can join myself and my coworker, Courtney Anclam. We're going to do a virtual lunch and learn because April is Financial Literacy Month. So we're going to talk about Save Your Money. You can find all that information at the website or phone number below. Of course, small dollar, big impact. We talk about it each and every show. If you are a nonprofit, municipality, or similar that is looking for a grant of up to $1,000 to impact your local community, thinking fun, creative, innovative ideas, we invite you to apply for the upcoming small dollar, big impact grant, which is due April 19th. We'll have another one coming out in May. You can find additional information, which includes the application and past winners at aarp.org/WI and then SDBI, which stands for Small Dollar Big Impact. So for next week's show, April 21st, we're actually going to, because we're going to be celebrating Financial Literacy Month, we're going to have Courtney Anclam with AARP Wisconsin. She's going to be talking about fraud in pop culture. She kind of gave me some ideas on stuff that we're going to talk about. It's going to be really, I think, fascinating, eye-opening, with a little humor, all about fraud though, but all about pop culture. It's going to be great. So we invite you to tune back here next Thursday at noon. As always, thank you so much for our guests. Thank you for our live viewers for your comments. We definitely encourage you to come back here next Thursday. We'd love to see you. And as always, be safe.